Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Cassidy, the host of the Information Addicts podcast, and I am out in the desert today to do a walk and talk for you, which may be one of the last ones. It's starting to be summer here in Arizona, so to walk out in the desert is excruciatingly hot when it's 110 degrees, so they will probably be reduced coming up lately, but today was such a nice day, so I figured let's do a walk and talk. And I wanted to address some of the things that I've been talking about, and specifically kind of talk about mental health as we look at deconstruction and what that is. So for anybody who has been following me lately, I have been doing some conversations and talking about deconstruction, why people leave the church, and sort of understanding the process and the journey that goes into that. And from my process in talking not only on my channel but with people who are outside of my channel about deconstruction and going through my own bout of deconstruction, mental health and mental health struggles is a huge thing that a lot of people experience and struggle with as they go through this process of questioning the things that they've always known and deeply held, and kind of uncovering what they should believe or what they actually do believe about the world and the place we find ourselves in. And in my conversation with Sarah Martin, I talked a little bit about my own mental health struggles. I briefly touched on it, but I figured I'd talk about it a little bit more because mental health was always something from the beginning of my channel I knew I would eventually tackle. Oh, there's wind again, so sorry if you can't hear, but nothing I can do. But anyways, mental health was always something that I was planning to tackle because it was such a huge part of my journey, and how everything sort of developed and evolved as I was processing through these things. So I feel like now is as good a time as any to sort of introduce you to that. So, it was 5 years ago now? How old am I? I can't remember. I think back in 2016, when I started deconstruction, that was sort of when I first started having anxiety. And there was a lot of reasons for that outside of just deconstruction. I had some personal issues, and then there was the fact of living in a different country and trying to embrace that, and throwing myself into a situation that I probably wasn't as prepared or equipped to handle as I could, but it started this process of anxiety, and I've never really been an anxious person. I wouldn't even say now I'm very anxious. I've always sort of been more unaffected by the people and the things around me and just sort of go with the flow in general. But yeah, there was really start of this place where I started feeling this anxiety, and of course there was other things, but I think there was a lot of that was linked to these spiritual changes that I was seeing in my life, and the questioning and the development of what I believe, and the loss of confidence in what I believed. And I think so many people feel those things and begin to have the same effects, because as humans we want a certain level of certainty, some place to stand so we can operate in the world and learn how to act in it well. And when you start to lose confidence in the story that you've always believed and the story you were given, it gives you a sense of uncertainty of where to put your hope, where to put your value, where to put your sort of map on which direction to move, or your identification of where to go. And for me, that was very real. And things sort of developed over a long time, but eventually I started getting manic episodes. And it was sort of the first time I'd really ever experienced anything like that. And like I said in my conversation with Sarah, a lot of what I would experience at the extreme levels of the mania was pretty much what I've heard described of like an LSD trip. You would lose track of time, space. At one point, at the very worst that I was seeing colors. Like when I'd look at lights or even just objects, there were like colors and it would all sort of change and shift. And there was a lot of loss of reality as I was going through these existential crises of what do I believe and why do I believe it? And, trying to do that all on my own. Not that I wasn't letting some people into the journey or the experience, but I definitely was taking on this path kind of blazed through by myself. And so there was a lot of isolation and lack of accountability of the amount of time that I was spending consuming information and spinning ideas in my head that led me to a place where I was too tired to even know how to think clearly or process clearly, and started getting to a place where I wasn't actually being helpful in the process of looking at information and trying to understand the world. But on the other hand, there was this sort of experience of going through this extreme and getting to this higher brain state that made me start to see patterns in the world and look at things differently, and unlocked things and helped me process through these things. And it was weird because sometimes the manic side effects were really terrifying and uncertain, yet sometimes there were places where it was helping me connect things that I couldn't connect before and think clearly and work through issues that I hadn't before. And so it was this weird mixed bag of like, I don't like what's going on with me, but there's also a certain level of help that's that's happening as I'm going through it. And I think the biggest thing that was sort of a deterrent while experiencing mania was just this lack of ability to slow down. Your brain just goes so fast, and I myself am just a naturally pretty energetic person. I'm a goer. I am very extroverted, and so I'm always wanting to go and experience and be. And when I was in these manic states, I didn't have a turn-off switch, and I couldn't always recognize when I was pushing myself to extreme, and it became really really bad, to the point where I decided to check myself into a hospital. And actually, especially the first time, because I didn't really know what was happening to me. It got so bad to the point where it's like, I know that what I'm experiencing is not normal, and I know that it's not what I should be experiencing, or at least what most people would say is a normal aspect and what I've experienced before to be experiencing. But I didn't know why it was happening. And I think for a while it was like, okay, something's going on, just take me to a hospital. I need to be out of this space to process these things. And so I checked myself voluntarily into the hospital, and yes, it was a very humbling experience. I think for myself, I had a bit of a pride of, the person that I was, and believed in a certain sense that I was above being able to get to a place so low. And it's really hard to realize that I was at that place without even recognizing it. It wasn't that I had a personal stigma against mental health or people who had been hospitalized. I was actually very sympathetic to it, and was very against the stigma that is often played within culture about what it is to have mental health issues and be hospitalized. But there was something in me that, it was this belief that I was above it, above getting to that point, because I was smart and I did the quote unquote right things, and I'd never had much trouble putting myself into a situation, overcoming it, and finding a way out. And so getting to the place where I was trying as hard as I could, yet I couldn't overcome this, and I got brought to this place that was so low that I lost control, was so humbling and so needed for me, because it got me out of this mindset that I was any different than any other person out there. That this experience of mania or mental deterioration, it's not just a certain type of people with bad genes, or maybe I have bad genes, but there's not like there's this bunch of mental health hospitalization in my family before. I come from a really stable home, and there's just not, there's not this pattern. But it was just something that it's like it doesn't matter who you are. We're all human, and we're all capable of being pulled down to a place that's so low, and being able to go into the hospital and be with other people and experience life and time with people who are also going through similar things. It just made me realize there's a lot more to all of this, and no one is unable to get that low. And it just gave me a more open and beautiful view of humanity, and how to be human, and how to work through those things better. I think through that process and going through hospitalizations and working with mental health professionals, it's definitely opened my eyes to something that I'd never really known or experienced before. And it definitely helped me realize some of the issues that go into trying to give support and create a space to give health and life to people who are struggling with mental health and going through those things. And I won't go into all of those now, because I think I'm still processing those things, and I definitely don't have complete answers. But it definitely gave me an appreciation for what it means to go through mental health struggles, and seeing how in a lot of our culture we don't see these things holistically. We kind of look at it isolated, and I think there's just a big passion for me, especially because a lot of my mental health was due to sort of questioning and adjusting and the spiritual questions that wants to try to figure out what is this importance, and how is the spiritual and the mental health linked, and not as a way to deny science or say that there's not something we can learn from the way that Western medicine can help us in the process of tackling mental health, but also trying to find a way not to ignore a spiritual level of those things. So yeah, I got hospitalized back in 2017, and then after that I had 3 years of no mental health stuff at all. It was pretty stable. There were some hard times, so there was definitely some emotional moments, but it was never overly emotional compared to the things that I was going through. And I learned a lot how to manage those things and be more vigilant about those things, and so was able to naturally just tackle those things without medication. And that was something that after leaving the hospital, they definitely sort of pressured me to take certain medication, and I chose not to because I didn't know the side effects really. And I talked to the doctors a little bit about the side effects and sort of asking people what it was, but I'm very cautious about what I put in my body anyways, and changing my brain chemistry. And so it wasn't that I wasn't open to medication, but it just wasn't something that I necessarily felt was a thing that was right for me at the time, and so I didn't take it. And there was a lot of pressure that if I didn't take the medication, I would relapse within a year, and that didn't happen. It was 3 years until my next sort of manic episode, and was incredibly stable and very normal, no real issues at all, and was able to function in a job with a high level of instability and insecurity, and still managed to work that without getting into a state of mania. But about a year ago, when I actually, right after I sort of discovered orthodoxy, is when I fell into this other manic episode. And that one was pretty rough. It came on very quick and suddenly. And, it got me back into a hospital, this time not voluntarily. And, it was a really scary moment, not only for myself, but for my family and everything that happened with that. And sorry, I got distracted. It was very scary, and from the outside, it looked really harmful completely. There was a lot of people who were really scared and wish that it didn't happen to me. But with that episode, I was very grateful for having it, because even though it got me into some tricky situations and was very painful to deal with, the time that I had processing through those things actually helped me get to a more stable place afterwards. Through those 3 years, I had taken some time to deconstruct and reconstruct, and got more confidence in God and who He was, but there was still a lot of questions and wrestling and skepticism. And after going through that manic episode and that extreme, a lot of that questioning and that incessant need to have these questions answered and get certainty just kind of went away. And there was a part of me that felt like I needed to go through the things I went through in that second episode to experience things I couldn't have experienced if I didn't go through it, and get myself into a place to process some of the traumas and the things and the religious and spiritual questions that I was dealing with in a way that I wouldn't have allowed myself in sort of a more normal state of mind. And so while a lot of people, especially in my life, sort of wish that didn't happen, I'm very grateful that it did. And I think that's another reason why I'm interested in trying to tackle more of mental health and how to process those things, instead of just seeing it as a bad thing that we should avoid and not talk about. I think there's something about, let's talk about it and find ways to embrace those things healthily. I think there are times when we hide the emotional sort of struggles or the things that are going on mentally, it can become worse, and it can go to extremes that are really bad. But like anything, there's trade-offs, and what bad things we get from experiencing mental health and sort of the processes of those things can often be met with good that comes out from them, lessons that we learn and things, how we learn how to process and understand the world around us. And I don't really have time to go into all of those things, and I'm sure as time goes on, I'll try to be more precise and eloquent about the way that I say and talk about the things that I experienced. But yeah, it's just something that is part of my journey, and it's been over a year and a half since my last manic episode, and I haven't had any signs of mania since, and I definitely haven't gotten depressive episodes. Been working with a counselor. I don't know, has it been 2 years? I don't know. I need to check dates. This is all off the top of my head. But it's at least been a year and a half since my last episodes, and I've just been continuing to heal and learn things and appreciate those things. And there are times I have to battle with my own perception and negative perceptions of what it looks like to have struggled with mental health and have been hospitalized, and how that could affect me in the future, and the ways that it could be used to discredit me, or just how that stigma can be manipulated to make me look crazier than I am. Not that I'm not a little crazy. I think we all are in a sense. But I have to fight that myself, and it's been a journey to kind of go through that. But as much as I do fight that, I am very grateful for the things that I've experienced and what I'm doing. And I know that there are a lot of other people experiencing those things too. And if I can lend a support, or, be a cautionary tale for people of why you shouldn't just push through those things alone, and how to better manage those things, and to not get stuck in this cycle that it couldn't happen to you. It very much could. It's not just about, the decisions we make. Sometimes our brains get pushed to an extreme, and even when we're doing the complete right thing, or at least as much as we feel, we can still get to a place of real darkness. In my last hospitalization, the last day of my stay, I went into one of these group meetings, and the woman who was leading it asked the question, "Are you living to your best potential?" And the crazy thing about sitting there the day I was supposed to get discharged was thinking back to the last 3 years, and especially the last 6 months that I had been living and what I'd been doing. And I could honestly say that I was living up to the best potential that I could. Yet here I am in this place, so low. And it's just a reminder that, even if we do all the right things and participate in the way that we're supposed to, things can still go wrong. But, it also showed me like there was things to learn in that place of darkness. And even though it's not a place that I should want to be, I was very grateful to be there and to learn from the people that I met, and to challenge my own understanding and conceptions of what it means to deal with mental health. So that's basically all I have to share today. That was a lot of rambling, but hopefully you got something out of it. And as I move forward, I definitely want to try to keep the conversation going, talk about my own struggles and what I learned from those, being vulnerable in that, and hopefully being able to find other people who want to be vulnerable and share their stories as well. So keep looking forward for that. If there's any specific questions or things you want me to address, just leave them in the comments below. I do read your comments. I've been trying to respond more, which I think I've been better, but I'm very bad at texting and social media. So if I don't respond, it's most likely that, not that I don't care about your comment or what you have to say. I've found them all very interesting. So yes, I will leave that there. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to keep hearing, subscribe, whatever, do what you want to do. Okay, bye.